Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Dynamics 365 Tech Talk. Today's topic is how Dataverse and Microsoft Fabric powers Dynamics 365 insights. My name is Rich Black, and I'll be your moderator today. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Milinda Vitharana, Principal Lead Program Manager, and Jila Yadav, Principal Solution Architect. Melinda, over to you to get us started.
Thank you, Rich. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being with us here. This is a very, very interesting topic. Here's what we are going to talk about the next hour or so. Let's revisit, let's do a quick recap of, how Dynamics 365 products have transitioned to these modern insights with Dataverse and Power Platform. Now, the bulk of this session is about how Link to Fabric enables you to drive action and also drive action with insights. Now, if you are looking into Fabric, this might be very interesting, but some of you might not quite be ready to jump into Fabric. Some of you might be still wanting to export data to your own storage accounts, build your own pipelines, and so on. So we will talk a little bit about Synapse Link service, which helps you do the same. But the good news is that regardless of whether you use Link to Fabric or Synapse Link service, you can still leverage Microsoft Fabric and get tremendous value. We will also spend a little bit of time, look at the roadmap, because we have a very active roadmap. We are very aggressively investing in this area. So let's take a quick peek at what's coming in the near future. And this session is, of course, jam-packed with lots of demos. It's not just the benefits, but we also want to show you how you can dramatically simplify your data integration and insights architecture and what some of the costs and benefits that you can look forward to. So with that, let's get started. Now, if you are new to Dynamics 365 products, you might be exploring what options out there to get insights from your data. If you're someone who's been with Dynamics 365 for a long time, like us, you might even remember some of these services. For example, almost 10 years ago, I was part of a team that introduced this service called Bring Your Own Database. And now, if you remember, around 2018, 2019, we enabled you to leverage data lakes in order to drive your insights. So some of these services we've been developing for quite some time. We've had quite a few improvements going into these services. But one of the things that we've done last 2-3 years is actually to bring all these different services built into various Dynamics products and integrate it with Power Platform. So what is Power Platform? Well, Power Platform is the low-code application development platform from Microsoft. You can look at some of these icons, just not all of them: Power Pages, Power Automate, Power Apps, Power BI. These are all tools of the Power Platform. Now, what we have done is the Dynamics 365 applications, we've restaged these applications on the Power Platform. What that means is Power Platform is the easiest way to get insights from your Dynamics data. Build apps using Power Platform. Now, behind all this is Dataverse. Dataverse is the platform that powers not only Power Tools, but also Dynamics 365. Now, Dataverse is not just a data platform that just manages all your data. Dataverse has business logic, insights, integration. So many services that are built into this platform are now available through Dataverse. So as you can imagine, what we have done is we continue to invest in these services with Dataverse and Power Platform. Now, if you look at the left-hand side, we have this service called Synapse Link for Dataverse. Now, essentially what this service does is it continuously exports your data from Dynamics 365, all the Dynamics 365 apps, finance operations, customer engagement, as well as Power Apps, continuously into a data lake in your own subscription. So essentially, if you do want to continue the classic integration pattern of exporting data, your IT team can build data integration pipelines, and this option continues to exist. In fact, what you can do right now is very easily upgrade from your previous services into Synapse Link for Dataverse. But what things that customers have told us is on the left-hand side, you have Dynamics, which is Dataverse. And then on the right-hand side, most of our customers were using actually Power BI, Microsoft Analytics products. So what customers told us is, hey, left-hand side is Microsoft, right-hand side is Microsoft. Why do we have to build these integration pipelines? So Link to Microsoft Fabric is this new service that we made generally available last year. What it does is it securely connects Dynamics 365 and Power Apps with Microsoft Fabric. So it's a no copy, no ETL way of integrating these two services together securely. Now, what this lets you do is Microsoft Fabric has lots of built-in tools, makes it so much easier for your low-code user to work with your data. Now, instead of investing a lot of effort in integrating these services, you can instead spend all that effort in getting value from your data. So these two services are still available. With Fabric Link, you can easily work with your data. So let's dive a little deeper. Let's look at Link to Microsoft Fabric, how it works, how easy it is to configure, but also how do you transition from what you have today to an architecture that benefits from Link to Fabric. And not only that, we will have JJ, who's a principal solutions architect who's worked with many, many customers, also talk about the costs and benefits that you can look forward to in this transition. Over to you, JJ.
All right. Thanks, Milinda. My name is JJ or Jila Yadav. So we'll go through some of the demo experience of the Fabric Link, how easy it is to enable Fabric Link with the Dataverse, and that includes the data from Dynamics applications, all Dynamics application, be it customer engagement applications or finance and operation. We'll also go about before and after picture, like how your architecture was before, and if you enable Fabric Link, how you can take advantage of simpler architecture. And then we'll talk about some of the cost benefit it can bring to the table. So let's go through the demo. We have a recorded demo. So let's go to the next slide and play that video, and then we'll talk through the other points. Here I can see all the Power Platform environment that I have administrative access to. I can search the environment that I want to enable Fabric Link. I'm looking for Contoso environment. I can see the environment here. I click on the hyperlink and I'm presented with the detailed page of the environment. Here I can validate that. If the Power Platform environment is linked with finance and operation applications, you will notice the finance and operations URL populated. All the Microsoft managed finance and operation environment that are deployed using lifecycle services already integrated with Power Platform environment. To find the Link Power Platform environment, head to Lifecycle Services, Environment Detail page, and look at the Power Platform Integration section. And here you'll find the Link Power Platform environment name. To set up the link to Microsoft Fabric, as an admin, I'll head to make.powerplatform.com and select the Contoso environment, which I just searched on the admin portal. I selected the Contoso environment. To enable Link to Fabric, I head to Tables, click on Analyze, Link to Microsoft Fabric. This is where I presented with a wizard experience, which is going to validate my access to Power BI and Fabric capacity. Once that is validated, it's going to prompt me to create a connection with Microsoft Fabric. Now establish a connections between my Dataverse and Microsoft Fabric. Once that is done, I'll be presented with the Fabric workspace. I'm going to create a new workspace and click Next. At this step, Link to Fabric is creating a workspace and lakehouse in Fabric and creating shortcut to one lake, and then it's going to initialize the table for the first time. And to monitor the progress of table initializations and add new tables to Link to Fabric, I can go to Azure Synapse Link and select Microsoft OneLake option here. Here, I can see all the Dataverse tables that are active or initializing. To add any new tables, I can click Manage Table, add Dataverse table, or Finance and Operations tables. And click Save. I can click Refresh Fabric tables to refresh the metadata from Dataverse to Fabric. To navigate to Microsoft Fabric workspace, I can click on View in Microsoft Fabric, and that will open the Fabric workspace. Now I'm inside Microsoft Fabric workspace and lakehouse that is created by Dataverse Link to Fabric feature. In the table sections of the lakehouse, I can notice account table, that is Dataverse tables created as a shortcut. You can also see finance and operations tables such as customer group, cust table, TI party table. To explore the data in Spark, I can right-click on the tables and open the tables in an existing or new notebook. Let's try a new notebook. A new notebook is going to get created and right away presented to me to explore the data from the tables which I just selected. The notebook is loading. The cell automatically will have the tables and sample scripts created. Run the cell and immediately the Spark polls get triggered and execute and display the record. As a data engineer, if I'm more inclined toward T-SQLs, I can switch to SQL Analytics Endpoint View, and in the Microsoft Fabric SQL Endpoint Explorer view, can click on the tables, load new query in the browser itself, and run the query to see the result. I can also click on the settings and copy the SQL connection string. With the Fabric SQL endpoint connection string, I can use tools like SQL Server Management Studio to connect to SQL database and write T-SQL queries to read data from Lakehouse just like any other SQL Server database. I can also join tables and create views to produce a simpler self-service data model as a star schema to help business analysts easily understand the data model and build Power BI reports and dashboard. Now, as a business analyst, I can open Power BI desktop, go to Microsoft OneLake, connect to Lakehouse, select the Lakehouse, and connect to SQL endpoints, load views, define relationship, and DAX measures, define calculations. Finally, I can use Copilot in Power BI Desktop to suggest the report, and publish the report to Microsoft Fabric Workspace. But I think just to summarize, what we demonstrated there is the setup to Link to Fabric is easy from the Maker portal and make.powerplatform.com. And you can select, once you have Link to Fabric, all you need to do is to bring a Fabric workspace and then select the tables from the Power Platform. Once the data, a shortcut is created in Fabric, you can create, you can directly use that data in the Fabric, you can use any tools like, SQL Server Management Studio or, the Fabric UI to create views and any other transformations you want to do in the Fabric, and then finally build reporting and BI capabilities. So next we will talk about how this is, kind of simplifying your architectures and how you can take advantage of this. So if this diagram from left to right, you can see it's a before solution. So many of you may already have these solutions today. Let's start with, on the left side, you see the, finance and operation has BYOD and export to data lake services. BYOD exports data to Azure SQL, exports data in data lake in CSV format. And then from customer engagement app, you have the data export services, which has been deprecated a long time ago. But you also have the Azure Synapse Link, which exports CSV data as well. You bring it to data lake. So what you are seeing here is the complexity of the multiple services. Many of customers now have, both Dynamics and CE applications deployed together, so using Power Platform for building other application. So it's basically highlight that, you are using multiple services and multiple staging area zone in your Azure subscriptions to bring this data. And then it doesn't stop there. You further, use Synapse Server, serverless pool or Spark or Data Factory and Databricks to further transform that data, because the CSV in most use cases is not very performant and other things. So you are doing the transformation and in that layer and putting that data back to Azure SQL database or Delta Parquet format, or using Synapse Data Warehouse, dedicated pool kind of concept, or Snowflake and other third-party data warehouse solutions before you go to the Power BI in stage number 4. So this is typical architecture, what we see, a lot of customers have today, multiple services, multiple transformations and data staging, and then finally doing the Power BI report. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see the after solutions. What you notice here is step number 1 and 2, where you had multiple services and you have to manage that. The process is gone, right? So now both Dynamics 365 Finance and Operation application and customer engagement applications are basically getting the data staged in Delta Parquet format in the Fabric Dataverse One Lake. So this is a One Lake which exists inside Dataverse. So we are making the data available there. So in the one step, it's basically the data is available in Data Parquet format, and then we create shortcut to Fabric. And the shortcut to Fabric means all the capabilities in the Fabric side light up right away. So be it Data Factory, data engineering, data warehousing, and including Power BI. Power BI have direct click mode. So if you are building report on top of that data, you can directly do that. We still have a stage number 3 here. Stage number 3 is more data prep. So in majority of the time, your data is not in the form which you can build your report on. So you can still use the Fabric compute capacities like data engineering and data warehouse workload to do that transformations and stage the data back into the Fabric One Lake to build direct query reporting. In some cases, if you want to do kind of more operational reporting, you can probably build some light reporting capabilities on top of the data which is coming from the Fabric directly without having to stage the data further. And Fabric enable you to bring data from other sources. It's make it super easy with shortcut concept and mirroring concept, to get the data from Snowflake, on-prem SQLs, at SQL servers. If you have data in other services, you can bring the data through the Data Factory in Microsoft One Lake and then join and combine the data and build the reporting in using the Power BI. So if we go to the next slide, I think we'll see how this technical innovation behind the simplification, what value you get. So as you see in step number 3, Dataverse built in one lake stores the data, which from the both finance and operations and customer engagement application. So the data is staged there, index in delta Parquet format, and the data is available. So the key benefit of that is data doesn't leave the Dataverse governance boundary, and authorized users can use Fabric to work on that data directly. This also enabled, any first-party applications which Microsoft has, on top of the Dynamics can still use that data and experience to, power other insight and valuable application scenarios on top of that data. So we're not duplicating multiple copies of the data, but we are working on, same copy of data from that angle. Data is then in delta Parquet format, so it's improved. You get improved query performance, and it's compressed. So no need to maintain additional copies. It's as you see that, like for all the BI workload, you need further transformations and data engineering and data science capabilities, and all that tool is already built into the Fabric, so you can utilize all those, Fabric capabilities to build your data warehousing solutions, lakehouse architectures, medallion architectures, all that using the Fabric. The Fabric provide, integrated billing, means, you bring one capacity in the Fabric, which is empower all the different workloads in the Fabric. It has its, source code control and enable simpler management and governance through. And if you have today's world, like when you are doing this in Azure, which is platform as a services, when you're using Synapse or Data Lake, these are platform as a services. So you have to still create those resources, manage the security individually. Now it's a SaaS platform. So what we are doing with the Link to Fabric is a SaaS to SaaS integration. So the most of the experiences which you have to deal with, to secure data, to manage the artifacts and all that gets simplified. And all you need to focus on is building your data model and insight using the Fabric. Number 4, reporting and insight. As we talked through in the demo, like you have the Fabric enables Copilot experiences throughout the workload, and including one new mode for Power BI, which is direct local to it. So if your data is in the Fabric one lake or shortcut, and you want to build report directly on that data, and you can enable your report will work in direct click mode, which is a very close to what used to be the import mode. You have integrated Copilot experiences throughout the applications, which can help you expedite the development of your data platforms as well as the reporting and BI capabilities. So yeah, I think these are the key benefits when you enable this, the simplifications and architecture. So simplification of the architectures not only helps you govern better and make easy to do that, but it also reduce your operational and long-term costs, right? So if you see this slide, before you were managing multiple resources in the Azure, configuring and making sure that your pipeline and other things are managed, and with the Fabric link, you have a simpler configuration. You bring one Fabric capacity on the other side, and you use that for all the different workload, and it's a SaaS experience. So the key difference here is the SaaS experience versus platform as a service experience. In data staging, like when you were using before picture, we saw that you're using multiple services, like data factory to copy the data, or you are using Azure storage and Azure SQL, or other data warehouse solutions, and you're basically incurring cost on those components, right? And what is in the Link to Fabric, what you incur cost is on the Dataverse DB storage. So because Microsoft OneLake in Dataverse is built in Dataverse, so any data which stays there is basically goes towards Dataverse database storage capacity. And if you are using Dynamics application, that Dataverse database capacity comes from you have already entitlement for certain storage based on your user licenses. And if you go over, then that's basically the cost which you incur on top of that. But remember that data which is going into the Dataverse OneLake is highly compressed. It's in Delta Parquet format. And we have some slides there to kind of explain like how much compressions we are seeing. But fundamentally, that data is very highly compressed. The cost on the Dataverse side is quite minimal. Operation cost in the step number 3, again, you were doing the data ingestions to SQL or data warehouses and developing these pipeline. So you're paying to multiple Azure services or other services there, and that spend is basically going to shift to the Fabric consumption with the shared capacity. So all the one capacity which you have on the Fabric will be used to do all the different workload. And from the Power BI and reporting perspective, again, this same thing. Even for the Power BI reporting, either you are using the SQL queries to push the data to Power BI import mode, or doing direct query. There is a cost there, and then you have the Power BI licenses to cover the Power BI reporting capabilities. Now the Power BI is part of the Fabric, which so if you have the Fabric capacities, even execution of the Power BI reporting and all that goes into the Power BI Fabric consumptions. So you can see that the different stages of the architectures which was in the before pictures leads to simplification, at the same time leads to the cost benefits there.
That was a really good demo. It shows how easy it is to configure Fabric Link. And then it also shows how easily you can work with Fabric. Literally, it's like having secure access to the database itself. You can work with all the Fabric workloads. So as you've essentially seen, Link to Fabric is a no copy, no ATL solution. So essentially, you don't have to spend time in exporting data, trying to secure it. We do that for you. Of course, you don't need to bring storage. The system uses Dataverse storage built in, and that may cost a little extra. And then the idea here is that the system pretty much manages these near real-time exports without any impact to your operational workloads. Of course, these ease of use, the configuration brings simplification. So you can simplify your existing solution by using Fabric Link. And not only simplification, but it also brings, cost savings, as you've seen, as the calculator, the examples that JJ has provided. So net-net, with Link to Fabric, you can not only simplify your architecture, but also you can simplify your architecture and reduce costs, but you can also leverage the new improved benefits and services that Fabric brings to you. That's the quickest probably way to get a lot more value for your data. But now some of you may not be ready to completely transition to Fabric at this point. Some of you may have existing pipelines, integrations that you build with things like Export to Data Lake, BYOD. Now you may be looking for a way to leverage the benefits of Fabric with minimal investments. So what you can do is use this Synapse Link for Dataverse service. Essentially, Synapse Link for Dataverse is a rebranded name. It's a new name But what it does is it continuously exports data to your own data lake. And you can continue to, use your existing integrations, existing reports, by simply upgrading to Synapse Link. And as JJ will show you in a little bit, even if you continue with this approach, still you can leverage the Fabric and use some of the capabilities in Fabric with this minimal investment.
Thanks, Milinda. So we have a little demo how to set up the Synapse Link. So the experience here is you create a new Synapse Link from this UI, and then you connect to Azure Synapse Workspace and your storage account and Spark pool. So essentially what you are doing here, there are two options here. First option is the Delta Lake, or Delta Parquet format, which we are going to talk here. So if you are using Delta Lake format, so you have to click on that connect to Azure Synapse Link workspace, provide the resource group and your workspace name. And I'll give a minute to come to that section, and then you'll select the Spark pool here. This is the steps which will do the Delta conversion. So what you are doing here is you are bringing your storage account, you're bringing your Azure Synapse Workspace and Spark pool for the Delta conversion. So this is the key here. So for the customers who are using Synapse Link already with the CSV option for the Dataverse or customer engagement applications, can migrate to this setup. So this is both are supporting the finance and operations and Dataverse tables. So once this Fabric link is set up, Synapse Link is set up, you can add finance and operations tables or Dataverse tables in this UI. The next experience is about creating the CSV option of the Synapse Link, where you get incremental updates. So if you're using export to data lake today and you have ingesting data to on-prem SQL Server or SQL Server, in this experience you basically skip the Synapse Link. So you do not need to bring the Synapse Link or Spark pool. You just provide the resource group and storage account. The data is going to be available in the incremental format in data lake, and then you can build pipeline to consume the data downstream. So that's the fundamentally two experiences. So once these this thing is set up, the Synapse Link provide you ability to get the data, query the data in Synapse using serverless or the Spark and CSV options produce data in the data lake, so you can build pipeline to move the data how you were doing before. So that's the key thing. And now let's look at the kind of before solutions and so before solutions doesn't change. Like you have this existing solutions, you are using this a variety of these services and variety of these options with Azure Synapse Link, and we'll talk a little more about Delta Lake format here. But with the Synapse Link, what we are eliminating is multiple services, right? So if you are using BYOD, export to data lake, and from the CE side Synapse Link, you can combine those together and have this Synapse Link enabled with Delta Parquet format, right? So in stage 2, you're getting the data in the Delta Parquet format. And from here, you can use your existing architecture components, which you were using before, to further process this data and prep this data the way you are doing today, to upgrade to the service and then do the Power BI reporting. There is an advantage of the Delta Lake here. Delta Lake format is an open source format, right? So it's not only more performant and store data in the Parquet, but also, if you're using Databricks, in Azure, you can connect to Databricks directly to a Delta format and query that data, right? Delta Spark pools natively, can read data and write data into the Delta Lake format. So it's easier to access that data through the Spark pool. And you have, the Synapse Link enable the serverless directly as well. So serverless supports Delta Lake as well as the tooling here. So you can, if you want to continue to bring the data to Synapse Data Warehouse or Azure SQLs, you can still use this Synapse Pipeline or Azure Data Factory to bring the data from the Delta format, which is there in your lake, and then ultimately get that data back into the Power BI to continue that reporting. Wanted to highlight one thing that, if you're using the Synapse Link, you're not logged into your current architectures, but it's just, it's trying to say that, hey, you can minimize that change of your current existing architectures by just switching to the Synapse Link with the Delta Lake format. If you want to use and start using the Fabric, we do provide out-of-the-box features where even Synapse Link produced Delta Lake data can create shortcut to Fabric. So if you want to leverage Fabric in this architectures, you can also do that. So this bring to the previous architectures where you can use Fabric to simplify this further. The difference between the Synapse Link and Fabric Link is, you have a SaaS experience in the platform. In Synapse Link, you have a platform as a service experience. So again, on the Synapse Link side, when you upgrade to Synapse Link, you have, many of these technical innovations helping, here. The first point, if you are using export to data lake, there are many, there were few limitations there, to name few, there were table limits that goes away. There is as you can see, there is an easy configuration experience and unified experience for all D65 application. So that's one advantage. Data is now stays in Delta Parquet format, which is more performant and compressed, and you get the same data format. What we mean is, if you have using export to data lake with the finance and operation tables, or using Synapse Link with the CSV data, you still get the same tables and same shape of the data which was there before with those services. So your downstream processes, if you have ETL, you have stored procedures or views created on top of the existing solutions to prep your data for BI and reporting, that still works. So you have the same tables, available in the Synapse Link experience as well. So that's the kind of key things. Your data format remains same, so you can continue to use the existing solutions which you have today. Of course, you can move to Fabric, transform that into the Fabric workload. You have easier migrations there too, but that's definitely a change where you are migrating some of those assets which you have in the Azure SQLs or Synapse dedicated pools and other services. You need to move that to the Fabric side. But the data shape in both the Fabric Link and Synapse Link will remain same from the finance and operations and Dataverse perspective. So again, I think the same comparison here, how this upgrade, can yield cost reduction. So as you can see that the setup experience has been simplified. So that's a kind of a key thing. And then the second point here is, data staging. So you, if you compare this today, when you are using the CSV option of the export to data lake or BYOD options, you are paying for the Azure SQL DB, you are paying for the serverless. There is an upfront cost here with the Synapse Link and Fabric Link, where you would pay for this Delta conversion. In terms of Synapse Link, you're paying for the Spark pool to do the Delta conversion or Parquet conversion. But at the same time, your data is compressed and you may not need further transformation of that data. You're basically eliminating some of the pipeline works which you were doing before to copy the data to different areas. So so that get minimized. The upfront cost which you incur on the Spark Delta conversion, we put some ballpark numbers here. So it's the Spark cost depends on the frequency of the data changes you are doing, Delta conversions you are doing, and as well as the amount of changes which is happening in your environment. So if you have a small, medium data changes, a small, medium-sized database, and the frequency of the changes is, let's say, hourly, you could be roughly looking at the 600 to 2K per month cost. If you up the frequency, you could be looking at 1,000 to 4,000 if your Spark jobs are running frequently. And it's not about the upfront cost; it's pay-as-you-go model in the Azure subscription. So it's based on the Spark pool configuration you select and how much time it's running to do the Delta conversion. For medium to large customers, this could be 1,000 to 2,500 if you do hourly conversions, or you can 2,000 to 8,000 if you're doing a 15-minute conversion. So the key thing here is there is an upfront cost, but you save other services. You can potentially save all the other services which you are using to do the further transformation or further staging of the data to do that. And also read cost, like many of the customers using Synapse serverless on top of the CSV and incurring high read cost of the data. And that's basically because the CSV formats are not compressed. Like it's a very the storage of the CSV could be high. And what we see when you convert this data into Delta Lake format, it's 6 to 8 times compressed. So technically, you pay that reduction. You save that in the Synapse serverless queries. And this is if you look at the last bullet, last point in this table, this was an example from a customers where they were spending around $10,000 for querying the CSV files because they were running frequent queries to refresh their Power BI report and some integration workload which they were running directly on the Synapse serverless. So the amount of data scanned from the Synapse serverless was very high from the cost perspective. And even if you pay upfront, $3,000 to do the Delta conversion, your Synapse query costs will reduce 6 times, right? Because the data is compressed there. So you immediately see the reduction in that cost. So that's the kind of a key thing here. Your operational running cost would be similar or lower. And if you can simplify the architecture, you save in other areas of the equations as well.
Just to recap, so assuming that you're not ready to use Link to Fabric at this point, maybe your intention is to upgrade from Export to Data Lake, BYOD, or maybe classic Synapse Link, which exported CSV files. Essentially, Synapse Link now lets you directly convert data to Delta Parquet format and link with Fabric. So you get to extend your existing investments because the data shapes are almost the same, minimal changes to your existing pipeline. However, you get to enjoy the benefits of reduced operational costs, easy to configure, manage, built-in integration, but also because of this Delta Parquet conversion, you save a lot of money on near real-time operational insights. Because your queries are faster, because your data sizes are smaller. Again, thanks JJ for sharing some of the patterns and some of the examples from our customers. I know the Fast Track team as well as the Fabric team. CAT team has worked with multiple dozens of customers, and this data is super helpful. If you're looking to transition, it's important to keep in mind that the team is actively working on fixing some of the small issues that we've encountered. In fact, we've been in preview for almost 8 to 9 months. We declared general availability last year in November, but since then we've been working with many customers, and we've detected a number of small issues, especially from finance and operations customers. So the team is super busy addressing it. As you can see here, we have a very aggressive roadmap to fill some of these gaps, and then all of these, in the coming weeks and months, most of these gaps are going to go away. So if you look at our longer term roadmap, essentially what we have done is to make these Link to Fabric and Synapse Link with Delta Parquet generally available. So you have the ability to onboard these services quickly. Essentially, if you want to leverage the Fabric Link feature, you can use the no copy, no ETL capability. And with Fabric, with all these workloads, you have the ability to combine your data from Dynamics, from Power Apps with your own data. And we've also made it super easy for you to upgrade from your existing services into Synapse Link and Fabric Link. Now, if you paid attention to some of the innovations we announced at the Build conference, what we've shown you is how you can enable AI on your data. You've seen some sneak peeks, for an example, how you can use Copilot Studio and actually build agents and copilots that can actually talk with your data, maintain a conversation with your data, ask questions, drive action. You can see those services becoming available preview in the coming days and weeks. One of the things that we are also trying to do is to make it even easier for you to transition, including built-in options where you can pretty much easily transition from legacy services into these new services we are building. The whole idea is to help you onboard to these new services, gain benefits from Fabric and Copilot innovations without spending a whole lot of time in the transition process. A couple of links that you will find helpful. Of course, a whole bunch of resources to help you transition. But I would also call out this last item here. We have a very active community, almost close to 4,000 users in the Synapse Link for Dynamics forum. Please feel free to join the community, give us feedback, and we also conduct weekly office hours. The product team, as well as the Fast Track team, the Fabric CAT team, we're all there. So many ways to get in touch with us, continue your journey by accessing these resources. And with that, Rich and JJ, I think we have some time to take questions.
There are a number of questions. There are a handful that are dealing with working with Synapse Link or Fabric behind managed VNets or private endpoints. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, I can try. It's a big topic, partly because, there's some confusion on what these services are. So you can think of Dataverse Dynamics services as SaaS services. Microsoft Fabric is also a SaaS service. So Link to Fabric feature pretty much connect these two services using the Microsoft backend. So now you can use Fabric recently introduced several features with which you can protect the endpoint, SQL endpoints. Those features should work with the Fabric Link feature. But I think, clearly can't do justice in a very short presentation. Feel free to join our, the forum as well as the office hours. JJ, I think we can do an in-depth session.
Yeah. And I think the Fabric Link, I think the VNet features is basically extension to Azure. So if you are using Azure services and you want to enable VNet there to talk Fabric to the Azure resources, and that's where that feature helps, it should not impact the SaaS to SaaS integrations, what Milinda was trying to address. So it should work like because these are the two services managed by Microsoft and SaaS services, they will connect to each other's without having any problem. And also, like, I think that if you're using Synapse Link and you want to kind of allow, we have a managed identity feature. So many of you, if you're using export to data lake, you could not secure your storage account with firewall rules and things like that. That is now possible with the Synapse Link. We have a managed identity features which can be used to have the secure firewall enabled storage account with managed identity concept. And yep, I think let's take another few other questions. Yep.
There are also a number of questions related to the cost. Can you clarify the costing model for Fabric and how that compares to the Synapse Link cost estimates that have been provided?
Yeah, I mean, JJ and I can certainly take a look. I mean, essentially what we've done is through our preview program, we work with multiple dozens of customers. So these sort of calculators that we showed you and also available via our documentation is a reflection of that. Now, the key thing to keep in mind is with Fabric Link, your Dataverse storage increases because you don't need to bring storage. Dataverse storage increases. That storage is charged at the rate of database storage, and you'll be able to see how much that is. With Synapse Link, essentially you bring your storage, you bring a Spark pool, the system makes use of your resources. That's the key difference. JJ, anything you can add there?
Yeah, and I think the key things what we saw is like because of the Delta Lake conversions, like when the data is stored in Delta Lake format, it is highly compressed. So the storage, and it's also, it's not just storage, but also the compute to do the Delta conversions, so that's basically covered in that Dataverse storage capacity. And many of you get entitlement based on your licenses of the Dataverse capacity. So if you have not utilized fully, then it utilize that, and then you just need to kind of take care of any additional on top of that. So with the data compression, what we have seen is if you have a especially for finance and operations customers, if you have a large database, you're not exporting all the data. So Fabric Link also provide you ability to select F&O tables, what do you want to bring. And, in databases, when data is stored in the SQL database, it has indexes, it has, the data in the row format. And when it goes into the columnar format, like Delta Lake Parquet format, it's highly compressed. So you're not bringing all the data, and then it's highly compressed. So you would see a 1 terabyte database, you're probably storing in Delta Lake format about 100 gigabytes, right? So that's a kind of a increase, and that's how much capacity you will be using from the Dataverse. And we have, I think, soon coming, Milinda, right, the reporting capabilities on the data Power Platform to show that how much you are using if you enable Fabric Link from that analytical workload.
There's a couple of questions about working with entities in Synapse Link and which entities are supported. Where can we learn more about those entities? Are there any resources for helping us pass validation for custom entities? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I can take that.
Oh, go ahead, JJ.
Yeah, so we in the customers who are using BYOD are using entities. And what we when we started working on the Synapse Link, we added entity support, but we know the challenges which customers had in the BYOD. So when you enable BYOD, you run into the performance problem with BYOD or data consistency problem, right? We don't want to repeat the same mistake in the Synapse Link. So we implemented a rule-based validation. We call it a row version change tracking validation rule. So we only support entities which basically pass that rule. And we have a UI which shows that, which can go through your entities, custom or a standard, it will tell you which entities are supported into this Synapse Link. Basically, it validates those rules for you. So we don't want it to repeat the same mistake. So like any entities which we have a row version change tracking validation rule passed is supported into the Synapse Link and Fabric link. You can select them into the Dataverse sections. There is documentation which provide guidance like how to enable the entities, but that's how it is. For the complex entity, we do have a tool called Entity Util. I believe I posted the link in the chat, but we'll share that again. The idea of that tool is like for the complex entity, you can create those entities as a view, on top of the Fabric SQL endpoint or Synapse serverless SQL endpoint to represent that view as is, right? So that tool can help, bring that complex entities into the Synapse Link. And Milinda, you want to add any roadmap item on that?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, one of the things that we have seen is, there's this confusion. Exactly as JJ explained, there's guidance available, but not many of you know that. So one of the things that we're looking at is actually letting you choose all entities from within Fabric Link or Synapse Link, and under the covers, we figure out, hey, if it does pass the rules, then we will stage it as table. If it doesn't, then we will select the underlying table. So we're looking into improving that so that, your life gets much easier. You can deal with all of those entities.
There are a number of questions related to, customers who are interested in getting started here and curious if these services can be used concurrently, if they can be used in conjunction with each other, if there's any limitations preventing us from doing so.
Absolutely. So you can make use of these services in parallel. We've done so that you can transition from one service to the other. Now, one of the things that you will notice in Synapse Link service is, it will not disrupt your operational workloads. You can pretty much try it out. One of the things that we recommend is first try it out on a sandbox. So that way you can get an understanding of how the service works and so on. And then you can later on transition into production environments. JJ, any insights based on what you've seen with customers?
No, I think that's definitely these services uses different technologies, so it can be enabled in parallel, and that's pretty much most of the customers are doing to validate this and in the sandbox, and then enabling in the productions. Even in productions, you can enable in parallel at a transition.
And just to add, we have almost like 1,000 customers using it in production today, several thousand trying its sandboxes. So, if you haven't done so already, now's the time.
And on that note, while you do so, again, I'd like to encourage everyone to join the community at this fourth link on screen here, where you can provide feedback, ask questions, and join us for office hours on a weekly basis. That is Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific. So with all of that said, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for attending. Thank you, Jila and Milinda, for presenting. And we want to encourage you to join upcoming Tech Talks and, again, provide feedback to the forum so that we can better tailor that content to what you're interested in learning. Thank you, and this concludes today's event.